All right, let's talk about the NFL. Is it rigged, right? That is the question everyone is asking. I made a video like this a week ago. I'll probably make a video like this in 2 weeks after the Super Bowl if the Chiefs win. But last week I kind of just showed some controversial calls and then gave my thoughts on it. Here, I'm going to kind of get into the different types of controversial calls because the question I'm going to ask is it possible that maybe we are wrong? Maybe our perception of what's happening isn't actually happening. I think it's actually a really interesting discussion. So, in my opinion, there are 5 different types of controversial calls. Let's go over them right now, and then I'll give my thoughts a little bit more extended at the end. Let's start off with the first type, which I'm going to call gray area calls. So you see here, Mahomes makes this pass downfield. Xavier Worthy gets credited for a catch here. The question is, should it have been a catch? I think this angle is probably the best one to show it. So again, he is ultimately going to get possession before he hits the ground here. The question is, when the ball touches the ground, did Worthy have possession prior to that? And did he maintain possession throughout the process of making the catch? To me, I would throw this in gray area. I think that if you are a Bills fan, you say that that's incomplete. If you are a Chiefs fan, you say that that is complete, right? That's just, to me, gray area is usually you kind of go into whatever team you're rooting for, which is one of the ways that people might think that the Chiefs get more calls than they actually do, right? Because on these 50-50 calls, if you're rooting against the Chiefs, you want them to get 0% of them. So whatever calls they get, you're going to then say it's the refs are calling it in favor of Kansas City. The other example was this one, the 4th down and inches quarterback sneak gets called short. This is probably the best angle to show it. I'm going to pause it when Allen is at his furthest right here. So remember, it was called short on the field. The line you see in the middle is my best attempt at trying to show where the line is right here. Do I think that football is past the first down marker? I think so. But again, this is the kind of thing where absolutely you can't overturn this in replay. Now, the ref could have called it a first down live, so you can say the call was still wrong regardless. But this still falls under the umbrella of a gray area call, right? I can't definitively say 1000% this was an incorrect call. It's one where there is some percentage that I am sure that it should have been a first down. I would lean first down, but it still is in the gray area, right? That is type number 1. Then there's type number 2 of controversial calls, which I'm just going to call weird stuff. Things that don't typically happen in a football game. And this is, again, I'm going to use this word. Sorry if it offends anybody. This is kind of where conspiracy theories can have a bit of an issue. Because yes, the NFL rigging games to help the Chiefs is a conspiracy theory. Like, maybe, doesn't mean it can't be true, but it very much is a conspiracy theory. And this is where sometimes conspiracy theories can get a little bit tricky, is because you're trying to explain something that doesn't fully make sense. And usually when you try and do that, sometimes you just fill in the blanks. That's a very common thing that people do. We don't like not knowing stuff, so we kind of fill in the blanks sometimes. Like this play is a great example of this. So it's the 4th and 5 play. You see that it was a drop pass, but a flag icon showed on the screen. You see that the commentator, Jim Nantz, even says, "Hey, what's that flag doing on?" He said, "There's a flag down." And then later on, they say, "Actually, wait, no flag. Never mind. Let's continue." So what happened there? Again, this was ultimately a weird thing, and being confused by this is natural. Some people said, "Oh, this is the refs rigging it for the Chiefs. If it was converted, then they would have said, holding on the Bills or illegal formation or something." No, that's not what happened. What actually happened was just someone in the broadcast booth messed up and said, "Hey, there's a flag on the field." So then Nance said, "Oh, there's a flag down," and then it turns out that. My guess is there's a lot of yellow gloves, which should be banned. Yellow gloves sometimes look like flags. I'm assuming someone saw a yellow glove, thought it was a flag, said, "Hey, there's a flag on the field." Jim Nantz then says, "Oh, there's a flag," and turns out there wasn't. In fact, Nantz even clarified this a little bit later on. I'm going to show the audio. Tony Romo kind of talks over him a little bit because he's talking about the play as Nantz is explaining it, so just be aware of that. And I'm also going to show the wide shot where you see there's no flag on the play.
Game's not over right now. 3 timeouts.
The report from the sideline that there had been a flag, but there was no flag. There was no penalty at all, and there's going to be the first timeout call.
So yeah, that's just, and again, I saw people saying this. I'm not making this up. There were Twitter accounts with a lot of likes and reposts saying like, oh, that's what happened with that flag there. You're just jumping to conclusions in that scenario if that's what you're doing, which, hey, sports are about fun. If you want to jump to conclusions, but that's what you are doing. Also, if we're going to use the conspiracy theory label, there's the old expression that everything is a conspiracy theory if you don't know how things work. That's going to lead us to the third type of controversial call, which is just people not understanding the rules. So like right here was a great example of that. Again, this is something I saw people say was, wait a second, you see right here, so the Chiefs decide to run down the clock. This is at the end of the first half. There's 2 minutes and 1 second left on the play clock, or the game clock, excuse me, but zeros on the play clock. The play clock and game clock had about a half a second delay. So therefore, the Chiefs, when they decide to run out the clock and get to the 2-minute warning, shouldn't the rule then be that they have a 5-yard penalty? Isn't this a delay of game? Well, again, this is something where not everyone knows this rule. It's understandable. But the rule isn't, and it's, again, it's kind of weird, so I totally understand why people get confused by this, but the rule actually isn't that the second the play clock hits zero, it means delay of game. You actually get an extra second. That's just kind of an unwritten rule that you get that extra second because they don't want delay of game, so it'll kind of give you an extra second. Plus, it just takes time for the ref to see that zeros are on the clock and then look down and see that the play still hasn't snapped. So because of that, they kind of just bake it into the rules. That's how they do things. So because of this is actually fine. This is how this typically works. But again, I can understand why it's confusing and looks like it should be a penalty if you aren't aware of that rule. And I would also throw in something like this of just people not liking what are penalties like this. This was ruled a face mask. Looks like a face mask to me. I mean, he grabbed his face mask and pulled. Like, it wasn't the most egregious face mask I've ever seen, but this was another one that got controversy. And in fairness, Tony Romo disagreed with it in the broadcast because it wasn't crazy, right? You could have let it go if you wanted to, but like, there's enough there to call it. So again, maybe I could throw it into gray area, but I just wanted to use this as an example of sometimes there are legitimate penalties that people just don't like and are saying they don't like because I think because it helps the Chiefs. But then going over to number 4, this one is a great example of like actual bad calls that help the Chiefs. Like those do exist and those do happen. And I'm certainly not trying to say that they don't. So this play, the reason why I don't like this was actually on that kind of controversial Xavier Worthy big catch, so it was declined, but this was called holding on Damar Hamlin, and he does kind of hold, so you might say, wait a second, shouldn't that, it's maybe a little weak, but shouldn't you call that? Well, you see how Travis Kelce pushes Hamlin. Again, it's kind of one of those rules where if you push off, usually they allow you as a defender to hold on a little bit, kind of not allow you to get pushed off too much. So a lot of times this is not called. In fact, I'm assuming what happened here is the ref who called this just didn't see that Kelce actually started the contact, in which case it would be a penalty on Hamlin, and he just missed the call. But like, this is a call that like does support the narrative for the Chiefs on a 3rd down and 5, defensive holding call that probably shouldn't have been called. But also over here, like here's a face mask that was on Hollywood Brown on this play that was not called. And had this been called, the Chiefs would have been in field goal range when they were up 5 points. Because of this, they ended up getting stopped short of a field goal, had to punt the ball, and then the Bills scored a touchdown and took the lead. So this was a huge call in the game. And in fact, I would say this is the most consequential call. That is the 5th type of controversial call, is the one that helps or hurts the Chiefs, because those happen as well. So there's a lot of different calls. But what I find so interesting about all of this is how many people have just jumped to the conclusion that, yes, the NFL is rigged. I posted this community notes poll, which I posted it 30 minutes ago. It could be, it could have changed since then, so feel free to check it out and see if it has. But I just simply asked, do you think the NFL is rigged? With 3 options. Yes, kinda, the Chiefs get favorable calls, but not because it's rigged, and then no. And in fairness, there's kind of a thing with polls where if there's ever like an easier option, people are more inclined to take that for whatever reason. People don't actually love to give intense opinions about things. So, kind of makes sense that one is the highest choice actually. But yes is significantly higher than no. And again, only 22% of people said no, they don't think the NFL is rigged. Vast majority think that the Chiefs get favorable calls, but not because it's rigged. And I would also mention that, I would assume, given that this is my channel, and my opinion is that the NFL is not rigged, people would be more inclined to say no and less inclined to say yes because, people seek out my channel because I would assume, at least if not agree, are interested in what I have to say. And often that means that you do agree with what I have to say. So what do I think? Is the NFL rigged? I think a lot of this can be explained by, again, I showed all of these plays. You look at all of them in succession, except for the the one that helps the Bills and hurt the Chiefs. You look at all the other ones, and it's easy to say, okay, here's some gray area calls that help the Chiefs. Here's just a straight up bad call that helped the Chiefs. Here's a weird situation that I don't understand, but why, that feels like it could have helped the Chiefs. They threw a flag on a 4th down and 5 and then just picked it up and pretend it never happened. That's weird. You put all those together, it's really easy to create a package that makes you feel as though the NFL is helping the Chiefs. But again, if you're being fair and being reasonable here, the flip side is that there are calls that hurt the Chiefs as well, and I would say the biggest call out of all these was one that hurt the Chiefs. A lot of these can be explained away, and the other factor is superstars do tend to get more calls. Travis Kelce is going to get more calls because he's a superstar, right? Like, there is some of that as well. The Chiefs are at home. The home team usually gets more calls. There's some of that as well. And I also think that if the gray area calls went the other way, I think a lot of people would be complaining about complaining the other way. Like, I think that sometimes when there's a gray area call, you're just more inclined to want the team that you want to win to get the calls, and you might kind of, feel that way. Subconscious bias can affect how you think about something. So is the NFL rigging games? Probably not, right? Like, at least that's what you think when you first hear that question. Is the NFL rigging games, right? I think my fiance she's not a huge football fan, but she's kind of heard about the rigging game stuff, and she just finds it funny. Like, oh, yep, all according to plan, because that's how it sounds from the outside looking in, right? Of course, there are, like I said, you can put together a package to make it look like the refs are helping the Chiefs more than they are, and you can put together, I think, even a reasonable package to put together that the refs do help the Chiefs out a bit. I think the rigging thing is where people just start to lose me a little bit, because who's rigging the games, right? Is it the NFL? Okay, because if it's for a betting thing, why does it always help the Chiefs? Wouldn't you try to throw people off the scent by sometimes helping the Chiefs, sometimes helping the Bills, right? So the betting thing seems unlikely. So is it the league? Is Roger Goodell going behind the owners' backs to do this? That seems like a dangerous game for him to play, because he could get fired and lose easily the best job in America, getting paid $30 million a year, essentially just to be a punching bag for the people, NFL fans. And also, how is the rigging taking place? So is Roger Goodell going behind the owners' backs, and he's telling the refs, hey, let's make sure Kansas City wins. Let's make sure that the, on big plays, let's make sure that we kind of rig it in Kansas City's favor so that way they win. Don't miss calls left and right, because then it'll be obvious. Let's just do a little bit to make it clear that the games are getting rigged. I don't know. That seems not worth it, especially because, again, I can speak from this channel personally. Ratings would have done better had the Bills advanced. At least my numbers would have certainly done better. There would have been more hype about the Super Bowl had the Bills advanced. I don't really see the logic. Not to say it can't happen. Sometimes things I don't see the logic in still do happen, but it seems highly unlikely in my opinion. Especially when, again, you think about the people that would have to know. I would assume there'd have to be in theory, I guess you could say Roger Goodell knows one or two officials, and they make sure that that's the broadcast that gets the big games, or those are not the broadcast, but those are the officials that get the big games, and that's how they rig it. But you're gonna have to know a decent amount of people. Why are the refs willing to do this? If you approach one ref and they say no, would they blow up your spot, and now the whole NFL looks horrible? It's again highly unlikely. I would also kind of, again, bring up one more conspiracy thing about, a lot of people have speculated, did America actually land on the moon? One of the biggest, I think, points in the yes, they did argument, I guess, yes, we did, I'm American, is Russia said that America did land on the moon. Why would Russia admit to it if there was enough evidence to support the conspiracy theory? Kind of using that same thing here of why do the other 31 owners, why have none of them said, let's launch an investigation and see if there actually is something going on here? Maybe it's because they don't want to get fined and don't want to open up that can of worms, don't want to seem like a sore loser, but maybe it's not. And finally, let's just be honest, every single good team throughout the history of time has quote-unquote gotten the calls. Has there ever been a team that's winning championship after championship and people are like, yeah, and they don't get the calls either. Like they're pretty unlucky. The Patriots got the calls. I'm a Tampa Bay Lightning fan. We always got the calls. Like it's just an accepted thing that happens. And the flip side, the teams that never get the calls, it's the Detroit Lions for years. Well, because they're not as good of a team, right? And I think part of why we view that is because the Chiefs, when they get a call, they make the most of it and are able to take advantage. When the Lions, for most of their history, got a call that went against them, they weren't able to overcome it. But yeah, those are my thoughts on all of it. I did my best to be condensed early on, kind of got a little bit rambly at the end, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.